Hi, you're listening to the Professional Speaks podcast with me, Craig McKellar, your host. As an ex-Big Four auditor for 6 years, I now run a specialist recruitment consultancy called McKellar Consulting. Throughout this podcast, I speak to senior leaders from the professional services community, past, present and future. These leaders work in accounting and finance, audit, tax, corporate finance, consulting, legal and investments. In the comfort of their own office, I will be posing questions to our guests to gain insights from them across a variety of topics, including balancing work and life, mental health and mindset, risk-taking, and effective leadership. These insights will help us learn, be inspired, grow, and ultimately succeed in what we want to achieve in our careers. Here's what's coming up on today's episode.
We all go through journeys. And even again, I find then when I'm bringing a plan or an idea to a client, often experiences you've had and how you felt at that time helps you shape the right plan for the client. You know, often I say to a client is if you have had a big life change, you know, don't jump straight into something dramatic. You need that time to settle down and adjust to your step change in your life. And I think that's the same even in your career. So when you get that promotion, you know, yes, we're all doing some of those things of the next role, but then it's actually just taking your time to adjust and settle into that, and don't try to bite off more than you can chew.
In this episode, I'm joined by Alex Docherty, who is a tax partner and head of private client tax at Johnson Carmichael. Topics discussed include juggling career and family life, how to improve your tax advisory skills, and having resilience. So Alex, for listeners and viewers who maybe don't know you, you're a tax partner and head of private client tax at Johnson Carmichael. You're also an ICAS committee member and sit on the Edinburgh branch of the Chartered Institute of Tax. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Craig.
If we maybe just start off with a bit about your career, and so I've mentioned what you're currently doing, but it'd be good to hear just a bit about your career and what kind of brought you to this point.
Okay. Maybe unlike many listeners today, I applied for my first job in tax from a newspaper ad. Right. I can remember it was a Thursday. I'd come home from a uni class. I went to Queen's in Belfast and I saw this advert. It was for Grant Thornton at the time for a tax trainee. I'd done a course at university in economics. One of the courses was regional economics and it touched on, you know, the tax tech around the UK. That obviously pricked up my ears and I thought, oh, maybe a job in tax is something I'd like to do. So I wasn't even going to apply. My mum's like, come on, fill it in. You'd have to, you know, write out your CV, all quite different, send it in the post. And then I did join Grant Thornton in Belfast. That was 2001. Things have changed a lot as to how you apply and go for jobs now. So I trained, did my professional tax qualifications, started off with Association of Taxation Technician exams, and then moved on to do my Chartered Institute of Tax exams. And I was there for about maybe 5 years or so, 2006, and then I moved over the water to Scotland. And you guys have been stuck with me for the past 17 years, or thereabouts. So I first joined Shane and Tate, again, joined their private client practice and moved from there to PwC. At the time, they were based in Queen Street. Stayed with them, I think it was until about October 2012. I was a senior manager at PwC, and then I moved to Johnson Carmichael. A firm I hadn't actually really heard about in the Central Belt much at that time. I think we'd maybe opened here just prior to maybe 2010, something like that. And so I've been here ever since. So
great. So a variety of firms as well in professional services, you know, Big Four, mid-tier, independent as well. You know, if you think of your times, you know, are they very different, you know, in terms of what you learn in each firm?
So I think it's always a bit of a journey, your career as such. What I would say is consistent throughout my 22 years or 23 years in tax is the people. Every firm I've been in, I've met great people. and made good friends along the way. And every firm has had similarities, and then obviously there's differences, and sometimes maybe those differences are more in terms of the level you then are at the next stage, or the progression you've made. So it's always been private client for me. It's always been working in that space with individuals, with their businesses. And I guess that's what probably attracted me across to Johnson Carmichael back in 2012. It was all about that, private business, working with the owner, working with their business, their wider family, to get, I guess, the best tax solution for their circumstances.
And I mean, you've progressed as well, right, in your career, partner now. It's obviously an industry that you really enjoy. Is it that kind of client aspect you enjoy most, or is it maybe the being a tax specialist to the help of people?
Yeah. So again, I've never looked out with practice. So I've never looked at going into a family office, or maybe going down the route of working for one of the investment firms and advising on tax products. For me, it's been about people and relationships and variety. And so, I've the privilege of leading in private client here at Johnson Carmichael, over 60 staff. They're spread around the UK. And we all very much work together and troubleshoot or problem solve. That's what I see tax as, where you're listening to the client and then you're trying to find the best solution for them. And that doesn't always mean the least tax. Sometimes a better solution maybe does involve incurring some tax, but that works better for their future plans.
So it sounds like, being an advisor is really what you enjoy, because arguably there's less of that if you were to go into a family office or another kind of industry role. You're maybe, of course, you're still giving some expertise, some advice, but maybe not at the same type of level.
Yeah, I think that's right. I can think on client relationships I've had since I've set foot in Scotland. I still have those relationships, and those clients have stayed with me. And part of that is, yes, hopefully they feel they're getting good tax advice, but actually don't underplay the importance of people do business with people.
Yeah.
And just finding out and growing with your client. I enjoy,
Yeah. No, great. And as you've progressed as well, each kind of senior role requires having more responsibility. When you've been going for the next role, the next kind of role up, has it come kind of just very naturally, or have you maybe had to consider some things before you're saying, okay, I'm happy to commit to that level of role?
Yeah, so that's probably a good question. I know I look back and think, well, how did I get here in a way? But actually, I feel it has been a natural transition. I feel throughout my career, I have had the support with, my line manager at the time to focus on what I needed to do or improve on to help me be able to handle, a step up or more responsibility. But I suppose a big thread of a career is, again, managing people. It's almost a given that you have the technical skills, but actually you get to a point and, I love doing the technical, but sometimes you've got less time to do the technical because there's so much to do with the people and the strategy.
Yeah.
I always feel I've had a foot in both camps, where I very much enjoyed the report writing and the advisory, but I also enjoy the, what's the plan for private client? How are we going to, grow next year? How are we going to manage, and we'll talk about that later, the impact of technology in our business, these types of things. So, yeah.
That strategic piece, I guess you're talking about, that kind of looking ahead, planning, how do we get there, what do we need to do? And is that something you've maybe always enjoyed? Would you say, I guess at junior levels, you're maybe talking to senior people internally as well as maybe quite senior people at your clients and having conversations. Do you think that's where it maybe started, or?
So I think that has helped give me more understanding and grounding. I would say even back to how I grew up. So, farmer's daughter, self-employed, all my family back in Northern Ireland are self-employed. So there's always been this thing of, business, whether that be what's the best time to take the cattle to the market, to, what's the best approach here in pricing a tax piece or whatever. So I do think I've actually grown up in a sort of entrepreneurial environment without realising it. And that's actually probably helped me think more strategically in terms of, business and, the team that I work with, the privilege to work with.
Because I guess with being a business owner, being self-employed, there's a lot of, responsibility placed on you, on your family members, for their survival, but also the growth of their business as well. So would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. And I don't think you can overthink that, because then sometimes you could feel like a rabbit in headlights. But it is very much a team game. Again, both from a firm perspective. So I know that if we weren't to have the year we predicted in private client, the rest of the firm's there to back and support us. But likewise, I know the team are there to back and support. So it's very much, and certainly always has been, even pre-COVID, in how I work, is flexibility for people. So for those that work in private client, they'll know that, the likes of November, December, January can be a bit hellish at times because of the self-assessment tax deadline on the 31st of January. So I've always worked with people that recognise and put in that shift of work when, the deadline's there and the pressure's on. But likewise, I think the flip side of that is the team know they've got the flexibility when they need it.
Yeah, and that's important, isn't it? Just as you've been talking about as well, in professional services, a lot of what you enjoy is people as well, working with people. Professional services, everybody knows, it's demanding, but like any role, that service clients or any role that has a lot of responsibility, it's a demanding role. People are always thinking about, how do I balance this with what's going on outside of work, with life? How's that kind of journey been for you in terms of juggling life and work, and as you've progressed as well?
So I've probably got more mature in my outlook on that, and maybe part of that is age, and I maybe can't work the level hours I probably did at the beginning of my career. Also, I now have a 7-year-old daughter. So, when I come home at night, pick her up from the nursery, or not nursery, that's long gone, but pick her up from the after school club, she expects me to be present with her. And also, the weekends to be there, to be involved. So that's actually probably helped me realise, right, 5 o'clock, I need out of the office. And I switch off when I leave the office. I'm an early bird, so I do see I prefer to get up. This morning, I think it was just before 6, crack on with things, then take her to school. And certainly she expects when I pick her up from after school club that I'm present with her in the evening. She can't quite cook yet, but we're making progress. So I've got better at probably delegating work that I don't need to be as involved in, and then having more of that time with her after work hours. So,
do you kind of see that maybe, because I've got nearly a 2-year-old, and it's, definitely, the hours I do have changed and how I work has changed. Do you look at your week as maybe the hours are slightly less than earlier on in my career, therefore just need to be wiser about how I use my time? It's not just about flexibility, it's about what you're doing in the time that you're working as well.
So I think that's totally it. And I think sometimes, and I'm now much more tuned into this, where you can actually sit sometimes and you're not getting anything done. You're actually better with productive time. And for me, what I view as my highly productive time is actually kicking off my day early. So I would get up at home, I, would kick off, I'm not saying every morning, but when there's a lot of work on the stocks as such, 6 o'clock, get going, then by 7:30 or so, get my daughter ready for school. But it's surprising how much I can get done in that hour and a half versus the interruptions of the day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And working in an advisory job, I guess the market can sometimes change how the department does, in terms of what needs are out there how many needs are out there from clients, and if they can afford to pay and things like that. Have you seen the market kind of go like that in your career in private clients?
So that's again, one I can think back to when COVID hit. So a large part of our private client business, yes, we've got the compliance, the annual tax return. So, that's something needs done every year, but a lot of our work is also the tax advisory. So obviously COVID hit, everybody was sent home. I do remember for the first 2 or 3 weeks thinking, how is this going to impact the business? What are we going to do here? Nobody's going to need advisory work because we're all, at home waiting to see what happens. Yeah. And then what happened probably about a month to 6 weeks after COVID hit, people hit, I guess, their groove. That was their new normal. And then what happened is, obviously, what was going on with the pandemic, it was making people aware, I guess, the fragility of life, and the focus came on inheritance tax planning. So we spent much of COVID busier than ever doing succession planning for clients. So clients that we've maybe tried to talk to them about it for years, and they're like, oh, well, not this year. We'll think about it again. All of a sudden it brought it home and they wanted action taken. So certainly we can see trends in our type of work depending on what's going on in wider society. But what I would say again about private client tax work is it's quite recession proof. And also our, I guess, client base, there's such a mix of clients, businesses across different sectors. So again, we do a lot of rural work. Actually, again, in that rural space, it was very resilient, through the pandemic in terms of financially. So actually there's a lot of work, a lot of planning still going on there.
So, do you feel, there are some service lines and professional services that do require a lot of resilience in an individual, because the market can go quiet, and then there's a struggle maybe of seeing where money is going to come in next. Have you kind of felt that you've needed that resilience in private client? Do people in private client advisory need that resilience as well?
So I think we all need to be resilient these days. There's so much can hit us, and be that just you could say the daily grind of life. You need this level of resilience, and there's pressures. There's juggling work, there's juggling personal life, professional life, and as you say, if you've got 60 staff depending on you as such, which I kind of view I have, then you're thinking, right, how do we stay ahead of the game? How do we progress as a team? So in my life, as we all have, we've all had our ups and downs. But I think, again, when we do have what you could view as a knock or a personal low, that can actually help you for, personally and professionally. I can look back, I lost my father when I was 22, and my mother then about 9 years later. So those were 2 times in my life where it was like quite challenging. But again, it also, I guess you refocused, and it actually made you professionally realise it wasn't all about work. There's also this, personal side, and the importance of, what would you say, self-care and being linked in with yourself, which you can get caught up when you get too busy. So, and then again, a few years later, sadly, my marriage broke down. So these things, they do shape you. But Again, interestingly enough, throughout all of that, wherever I've worked or been, I've always had the colleagues have supported me through that. So it's not just about the job, it's actually about being in an environment where, people look out for each other, and then using those lessons to help others and all the rest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, what you've just talked about, gives you perspective, doesn't it? And that, because often, like you say, we can be so busy in our job that we're consumed by it, but it's healthy to have things outside of work. It's healthy to have colleagues to support you. And, I think old school, and people still maybe have that perception now, is, don't bring your life into work, type of thing. Just keep it work, keep it, no emotion and things like that. But I mean, would you say it's better for culture, team fit, working together, collaboration, if people do know who you are?
Totally. Yeah. And again, back to, even when I had my daughter again, I definitely was much more empathetic to the needs of, people with children, be it the mum or the dad, and the flexibility. So all these things help you, tune in with your team, your clients. We all go through journeys. And even again, I find then when I'm bringing a plan or an idea to a client, often experiences you've had and how you felt at that time helps you shape the right plan for the client. Often I say to a client is, if you have had a big life change, don't jump straight into something dramatic. You need that time to settle down and adjust to your step change in your life. And I think that's the same even in your career. So when you get that promotion, yes, we're all doing some of those things of the next role, but then it's actually just taking your time to adjust and settle into that, and don't try to bite off more than you can chew straight away. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I mean, tax advisory skills, if we're talking about that as well, that be one aspect you just talked about there, being able to know your clients and tune into them and what's happening and being able to advise them. That's obviously one aspect. But have you got any thoughts on maybe what people should work on to have good tax advisory skills?
So probably the key one is be interested for me. A client knows if you are or aren't interested in their business. And remember, that's their whole life, essentially. So ask questions. They want to tell you about their business, and also listen. So, don't go in there thinking, right, I know I've got the solution already. Because actually what you think might be the solution, once you hear their story and where they've been and where they want to get to, that might completely change things. I've seen me many a time go to a client meeting where, the client says, yes, I think this is the route to go down. We do the paper, we say, right, here's the steps to achieve this. And somewhere along the line of that meeting, we, have a discussion that goes off piste almost. And the next thing, they're saying, actually, I think that's what I want to do. And so it's being flexible. It's not to say, oh gosh, no, I think it's this. It's actually listening to the client, go away, rework it, and come back. And then that's a happy client. You're happy because the client's happy. And even in terms of, what would you say, word of mouth, they're saying to their friends and family that it's worked out well for them. So it's tax advisory skills, knowing your clients, having a conversation with them, because that's what you do as an advisor, as a consultant, and like you've just said, through that conversation they might then say, oh, actually that's something that I should do instead. So that's good advice. Would you also say, in terms of letting the clients know it's important to be authentic as well? Totally. Authenticity comes across. You can't fake interest, I feel. And I would also say to anyone starting out in their career or partway through their career, be yourself. Don't try to emulate your boss, your peer group, be yourself, and style you in your career. And that's how, again, you'll have that authenticity. And again, if you are working, I know here at Johnson Carmichael, you know, with various sectors, I always try to say to the team, you know, hands up who wants more experience, property, rural, renewables, actually getting that on the ground experience, deep experience, that actually will shine when you're talking to a client, you know, if you know your subject matter.
Yeah. And do you think that helps when it comes to winning business? So, and I guess I'm thinking about where maybe you don't have warm relationships, you know, you're kind of going out to the market to get new business. It's been authentic, quite key in doing that.
It's key, and also, you know, being the subject matter expert. In some ways you could say it's never been easier to win business. You know, people, be it LinkedIn or all these other professional networks, you know, you've got that through technology, that landing board to talk to people, to tell them what you do, to connect with people. You're probably only a step away from the contact you want to be in front of, and also leverage your relationships, be it, you know, that's not in a cold calculating way, but, you know, your friends know people, colleagues have contacts, certainly in the likes of the firm here, that cross-fertilisation of clients does seem to work really well. You know, it's not my book of business. It's actually, you know, something I'll pass on in theory to next generation coming through. And, you know, am I the right person for that client, or actually is there a better fit? Or if I have met with a client, maybe they're not wanting private client advice, but maybe actually, you know, there's a potential transaction, exit from a business, something else going on, and then actually bring in your colleague in to meet them. So,
and I mean, I see that you, JC, are sometimes out at like the Royal Highland show as well, and talking to people. You know, and do you love doing that sort of stuff as well? Meeting lots of farmers.
Indeed. So again, that's my, you know, born and brought up on a farm. So that was probably a sector I had no choice to get to know about, but actually I still very much enjoy being involved with. I don't have to go out and, you know, feed the sheep now. I'm living in the middle of Edinburgh, but I enjoy doing tax work for rural businesses. And the unique thing, I guess, again, about that, the rural business space is it's connected to so many other sectors, property, you know, renewables. We now get carbon sequestration, food and drink sector. So actually, you know, Scotland is very much steeped in rural, and it connects so much. And so from that, you know, you can grow in your awareness of other things. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Now, this podcast will be released kind of just before the new tax year in April, and you know, it's well known that income tax is changing in Scotland as well. It's going to be very different to the rest of the UK, particularly in you know, some of the brackets that people earn money. And you were quoted recently, I think last month, in a Business Insider about that. Could you say a bit more about that for maybe anybody listening to this who maybe isn't aware of the impacts coming? Yeah, okay. So Scotland obviously has its default tax powers, Scottish rate of income tax. Over the last few years, that has been devolving more, and tax rates are increasing here in Scotland. It's quite complex getting, and I think there is, you know, a concern there. You know, it's quite hard for the individual in Scotland to almost work out, well, gosh, what rate am I paying? Because they're juggling Scottish tax rates, but also for certain types of income, they also have to use rest of UK rates. And what we're seeing, based on, again, various thresholds that have been brought in Scotland, those earning in and around, I think it's about 43,000 to about 50,000, are actually paying a 52% rate of tax. That
is compared with a 30% rate of tax in the rest of the UK.
And can I just ask, that's people that are employed, not people that are maybe self-employed?
People that are self-employed as well will pay that. So it's only dividend income and savings income, like interest and that are rest of UK rates. Everything else, so if you're self-employed, if you've got rental income from a property in Scotland, or also if you've got employment income, that's Scottish rates of income tax. Mm-hmm. So again, I think it was the tech sector in particular was mentioned in that article that they are actually finding it more challenging to recruit individuals earning in and around that price bracket just because of the tax differential. So I think that is a challenge for Scotland to get talent north of the border whenever there's quite a significant impact on your pay packet.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think there's two sides of the coin. One or there's two impacts of it. I think some people will start to look to maybe go down south potentially, for certain roles. And another side is that it's going to be hard to just get people here when it's already a market that's short of good talent. So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see kind of what businesses do in terms of, being creative about packages, because not everybody can just put the salary up, just because of the income tax. So, it's a question that I've had people ask me as well. Oh, do you think they'd pay actually that amount, over the banding, because of the income tax coming? And I don't know what businesses are gonna say to that. So it's gonna be a challenge in a lot of ways. Have you had clients talk to you about it as well? So
I've both had clients talk about the challenge in getting staff and also retaining them versus maybe competitors down south. But also again, clients actually looking at, well, if I spend some time in England each week, some time in Scotland, actually do I need to reassess where my place of residence is? Because, the tax rates are diverging. That said, it's not all about tax. And actually, I think your piece about the wider package, that's probably where employers do need to think more creatively. If the cash isn't there such to make up the differential, then actually what more's on offer? And obviously, Scotland's got lots on offer. Edinburgh is certainly a lovely city to move to. And, that may well be more important than, net pay at the end of the day. But I would caution more change in Scottish tax rates. I just think, again, it's a bit like the pension regime. There needs to be a period of stability. People want to know the direction of travel and they want to just get comfort instead of, rates and bands and allowances are constantly changing. Yeah.
No, thanks. And just as we come to the end as well, technology, right? It's always advancing. It's always having an impact, and particularly in professional services. AI was, the technology of the year last year. It's, improving at scale this year. Do you see that coming into private client, or maybe are you using some of it already? Or?
We could probably be using some of it and we don't know. I think that's what I'm hearing out there. So I think there'll always be that place for the advisor. And again, back to people do business with people. People want relationships. They don't want faceless. We're already there in a lot of scenarios, faceless institutions. Will there still be a need for tax people? Well, I hope so. Probably helps us that it changes at least twice a year, if not more. But certainly we are looking at streamlining compliance aspects, looking at where automation can, assist in parts of the preparation of the return, but then there's still the analysis of the return. And, tax isn't simple. And again, as the world evolves, tax seems to get more complex, albeit, the mantra is let's simplify things. So we're very open to, technology, embracing technology. You've got to stay relevant. At the same time, we don't want to turn into, a faceless setup. Yeah. So very much part of what I'm looking at in my team is, it's continuing to upskill staff, give them development opportunities, make them that all-round advisor. And that's not just about the technical skills, that's about the soft skills too, to be able to, understand and relate to clients and manage those relationships.
Yeah, no, I think it's important. I mean, and even in my job as well, there's lots of things out there, saying you can use AI this way or that way, this way or that way. And it's about thinking, what's to use that's going to be efficient but not take away the kind of service that you give that adds value. So, good luck navigating that path. And last question I'd like to ask guests is just looking at the next 12 months, what goals that you might have professionally and personally. You can either answer both or just one of them. So professionally, I'm always charging ahead, thinking about what's coming next. And whilst we'll set our private client strategy every 3 years, we do still dust that down every year to think, well, actually, is this relevant? Or hang on, has something come in that's more important? That we need to rethink what we're doing here. I'm currently putting in a submission for the team for tax awards. So my focus is very much on raising that profile of the team, our capabilities, and getting out there to the market. That's where, businesses, and again, attracting really good talent in the door. Personally, I enjoy my holidays. That's again my downtime. So, I do have that catalogue of holidays. What do you actually maybe want to achieve? I did a house extension a couple of years ago. The one bit I didn't touch was the garden. Right. I see after the last storm, there's another fence down. So probably this year, if I could tackle it, and, have something that Alan Tishmarsh would be proud of, then that would be a personal achievement this year. Great. Well, good luck with that on both fronts. Thanks again for your time. I really enjoyed the chat.
Good. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Professional Speaks podcast. This podcast was produced by Springwood Studio Productions. Remember, you can watch the episode recording on our YouTube channel, and if you can, please do subscribe and share with all of your friends. The more people who listen to this, the more guests we can have on to share, so that you can learn, be inspired, grow, and ultimately succeed in what you want to achieve in your career. Please also contact me if you have any feedback on this episode. I'd love to hear from you.